OpenAI's $110 billion takeover. $110 billion just went into one AI company in a single week. And most people saw the headline, scrolled past it, and went back to whatever they're doing. That was the wrong move because what just happened is not a business story, it's not a finance story, it's not even really a technology story. It's a signal, a giant, impossible to ignore signal about what's coming next for every single person on the planet who goes to work, runs a business, or has a kid in school right now. And I'm going to break it all down for you today. Plain English, no jargon, no hype, just the facts, what they mean, and what you need to do about it before everyone else figures it out. Okay, let's go. So first, let's get the numbers right in our heads. $110 billion. Written out, it almost doesn't look real. To put that in a frame that you can actually hold, Apple, the most valuable company on earth for the last decade, went public in 1980 for $1.8 billion. Google's IPO in 2004 raised $1.9 billion. Facebook went public in 2012 and raised $16 billion. That was called the biggest tech IPO in history at the time. OpenAI just raised nearly 7 times the size of Facebook's IPO in a private round before even going public. Ford Motor Company, the company that literally invented the moving assembly line, the company that put the first car in the driveway of the American middle class, a company that's been around for 100 years, is worth about $45 billion today. General Motors, worth about $50 billion. You could buy both of those companies, the two biggest car manufacturers in American history, and still have $15 billion left over from what just went into OpenAI. That number is hard to hold in your mind. I know, because here's what makes it feel real. Amazon put in $50 billion. $50 billion. That is by far the single largest investment Amazon has ever made in any company in its entire history. Jeff Bezos built Amazon from an online bookstore into $1 trillion empire, and the company he built just wrote a bigger check than it has ever written for anything for OpenAI, for one single AI company. Nvidia put in $30 billion. Nvidia makes the chips that power all of this AI. They are the company that supplies the pickaxes in this gold rush, and they just bet $30 billion on the company that is one of their biggest customers. That's not a supplier relationship, that's a strategic alignment. SoftBank put in $30 billion. This is on top of the $30 billion SoftBank already put into OpenAI less than a year ago. Masayoshi Son, the founder of SoftBank, has now invested $60 billion into a single AI company. This is the same man who called AI a defining force shaping humanity's future. That's not corporate talk, that is a man betting his legacy, his firm, and the majority of his capital on a single thesis. And the thesis is this: OpenAI is going to become the operating system of the global economy, and if that happens, $110 billion is a bargain. Now, let's talk about the valuation, because this is where the story gets genuinely mind-bending. The $110 billion raise gives OpenAI a $730 billion pre-money valuation. When you include the fresh capital, the post-money valuation pushes closer to $840 billion. Let me put that in context. More than 95% of all companies in the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in America, are worth less than OpenAI right now. That includes Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Chevron, Cisco, IBM, Salesforce, Goldman Sachs, companies that have been building revenue for decades, companies with real factories, real stores, real employees, real products. And OpenAI is now more valuable than all of it. And here's what makes that even more extraordinary. OpenAI has projected it will not achieve profitability until 2029 at the earliest. The company is still spending more than it makes. It is, in the traditional sense of the word, losing money. So why is it worth nearly $1 trillion? Because investors aren't buying what OpenAI is today, they are buying what OpenAI will be. The company has reportedly informed investors that it expects to invest about $600 billion in compute infrastructure by 2030, including data centers, advanced AI chips, and related technologies. At the same time, it's targeting more than $280 billion in revenue over the same period. $180 billion in revenue by 2030. That's 4 years from now. To put that in context, Apple, one of the most profitable companies ever created, does about $390 billion in annual revenue. OpenAI is targeting 2/3 of Apple's revenue within 4 years, as a company that barely even existed 3 years ago. You can agree with that projection, or you can disagree with it, but you have to understand that the people who wrote the biggest checks, the people at Amazon, Nvidia, and SoftBank, who have more data, more analysts, and more information than anyone else, looked at those numbers and said, we believe it. This is what this fundraise actually means. Now, let me tell you something that almost nobody is talking about in the coverage of this story: the user numbers. OpenAI reports that ChatGPT now serves more than 900 million weekly active users globally. The company has surpassed 50 million consumer subscribers who pay for premium features, and more than 9 million paying businesses users rely on ChatGPT for daily work. 900 million weekly active users. Instagram, to put it in perspective, has about 2 billion monthly active users. YouTube has about 2.5 billion users. The TikTok has about 1.5 billion monthly users. ChatGPT, a product that didn't even exist 3 years ago, is now approaching the size of those platforms on a weekly basis. And OpenAI says January and February 2026 are on track to become the largest months for new subscribers in the company's history. That's not a company that's plateaued. That's a company still in the vertical part of the growth curve. Sam Altman posted on X right after the announcement. He said, "We have a lot of work to do to bring you the tools you deserve." That's not a man who thinks he's won. That is a man who knows the race has barely even started. So where does this money actually go? This is the question everyone should be asking, and the answer tells you everything about what the next 5 years look like. The first bucket is compute. OpenAI will use 3 gigawatts of dedicated inference capacity and 2 gigawatts of training on NVIDIA's Vera Rubin systems. 5 gigawatts of compute capacity just for OpenAI. To put that in perspective, the entire state of Delaware uses about 3 gigawatts of electricity. OpenAI is building an AI infrastructure that requires almost double the power consumption of an entire US state. This is not a software company, not anymore. It's a physical infrastructure company, a power company, an industrial operation. The second bucket is distribution. OpenAI is expanding its existing $38 billion agreement with Amazon Web Services by $100 billion over the next 8 years. AWS will also serve as the exclusive third-party cloud distribution server and provider for OpenAI's enterprise platform. Think about what that means. Every company, every hospital, every government, every school that uses Amazon's cloud services, which is most of them because AWS has roughly 30% of the global cloud market, is now going to have direct access to OpenAI's models baked into their existing infrastructure. This is not a feature announcement, this is a distribution strategy. This is OpenAI embedding itself into the pipes that run the global economy. The third bucket is reach. SoftBank's network spans Japan, Southeast Asia, India, Latin America, the Middle East. Masayoshi Son doesn't just bring money, he brings a Rolodex that spans governments and corporations across most of the world. That means infrastructure, distribution, and global reach. This is what $10 billion buys, $110 billion. And this is what makes this different from every other big tech fundraise in history. Now, let me tell you the story of how we got here, because the speed of this is the part that I don't think people have truly processed. 3 years ago, in November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT as what they internally calls a low-key research preview. They didn't expect it to be a big deal. They were mostly putting it out to get feedback, and it gained 1 million users in 5 days. That had never happened before, not for any product, not for anything. Sam Altman has since said that even that original ChatGPT launch, which he called one of the craziest viral moments he'd ever experienced, now looks slow compared to what's happening today. He said recently that ChatGPT is now adding 1 million new users in a single hour. A single hour. How crazy is that? All right. So if you've never seen this before, I mean, this is something that's unheard of. Absolutely wild. And in October 2024, OpenAI raised $6.6 billion at a $157 billion valuation. People called that number insane at the time. In March 2025, 5 months later, they raised $40 billion at $300 billion. That was a doubling of the valuation in 5 months. Now, less than 12 months after that, they've raised $110 billion at a $730 billion pre-money valuation. The valuation has gone up nearly 5 times in less than 18 months. That is not a trend line, that is a phase change. And the thing about phase changing is that they don't announce themselves politely. They don't give you time to adjust. They just happen, and then afterwards, everyone looks back and says, wow, that changed fast. We're in the middle of that moment right now. Okay, so I need to address something directly because I know some of you are thinking it. You're thinking, this sounds like a bubble. You're thinking, I remember when everyone said internet companies were going to change everything in 1999, and then pets.com went bankrupt. And then the NASDAQ lost 80% of its valuation, and then everyone just lost their minds. I hear that. And I want to take that skepticism seriously because it's not stupid. It is historically informed. Here's the honest answer. Some of this money will not generate the returns investors are hoping for. Some of the projections will turn out to be too optimistic. Some of the applications that are being predicted for AI will take longer or prove harder than anyone currently thinks. That is always true of any technology wave, but here's what makes this different from 1999. The dot-com bubble happened when the internet was real, but most of the businesses being built on top of it weren't. Amazon was real, Google was real, eBay was real, but Pets.com really wasn't. And the bubble popped because too much money chased too many companies that didn't have actual business models, just websites and PowerPoint decks. AI has real products, real revenue, real customers. There are a lot of tech companies in the AI space that are just adding AI inside them and they won't last. But look at OpenAI. OpenAI's annualized revenue hit $12.7 billion by the end of 2025 and is growing fast. Anthropic is at multiple billions in annual revenue. Google's Gemini products are embedded in billions of searches. Microsoft's Copilot is in Office, Excel, Word, products that over 1 billion people use every single day. The revenue is real, the products are real, the customers are real. The question isn't whether AI will change things, the question is how fast and who captures the most value when it does. And that is the question $110 billion is trying to answer. Now, I want to slow down about what this means for people who don't work in tech. So, for example, for people with regular jobs, regular people, regular jobs, because this is where the story gets complicated and where I think it's most important to be honest. OpenAI is not being subtle about what they think their technology can do. They said, we are entering a new phase where frontier AI moves from research into daily use at global scale. Leadership will be defined by who can scale infrastructure fast enough to meet demand and turn that capacity into products people rely on. Read that again. Products people rely on. Not products people occasionally use, products people rely on. Like how they rely on electricity, like how they rely on the internet, like how they rely on their phone. Sam Altman has said publicly that he believes AI will eventually be able to do most of the cognitive work that humans currently do. Not all of it, and not this week, but eventually over time, a significant fraction of what knowledge workers do, writing, analyzing, coding, researching, designing, advising, will be done by AI systems. And he's not the only one saying this. Dario Amodei, who's the CEO of Anthropic, OpenAI's main competitor, the company that makes Claude, wrote a long essay at the end of 2024 where he argued that AI could compress decades of scientific progress into just a few years. He talked about AI that could run experiments autonomously, design drugs, write and test code, and potentially operate entire business functions with minimal human oversight. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the company that makes the chips that power almost all of this AI, has said publicly that the role of entire departments inside companies is going to change because AI is going to be able to do the work of hundreds of employees. These are not fringe voices. These are the people building this technology, people who have seen the internal benchmarks, people who know what these models can already do in research settings that the public hasn't seen yet. And they're all pointing in the same direction. Let me give you a concrete real-world story that makes this land better than any projection. Klarna. You've probably used their buy now, pay later service at checkout, Swedish fintech company, multi-billion-dollar business. In early 2024, Klarna announced that their AI customer service system was doing the equivalent work of 700 full-time customer service agents who are human, not replacing them one-to-one, doing the work of 700 people, handling 2.3 million conversations, resolving issues in under 2 minutes compared to the industry average of 11 minutes, with higher customer satisfaction scores than their previous human teams. The savings were in the tens of millions of dollars per year, from one deployment, only one use case, one company. Here's what I want you to sit with. Klarna is not a tech company. They don't build AI. They used AI built by someone else and plugged it into their systems, and it replaced the workload of 700 people. That's the model. That's what every company in the AI industry is now trying to figure out how to do. And the infrastructure that OpenAI is building with $110 billion is designed to make that accessible to every single company on earth. Not just the big ones. Every company, every hospital, every law firm, every school, every small business. That's market, and that's why the valuation is where it is. Real quick, I just want to talk to you about something I've built for exactly this moment. It's called the AI Profit Boardroom. Here's the deal. Every week inside the boardroom, I break down exactly what's happening in AI and what it means for your money, your career, and your business. Not in theory, in practice with actual playbooks. We've had members cut their content production time from 20 hours a week to 4. Members who have automated their lead generation and doubled their pipeline without hiring a single person. Members who built products for clients using AI tools they learned inside the community, products that couldn't have been built 6 months ago. This community exists because the gap between people who understand what's happening and people who don't is getting bigger every single month. And the time to get on the right side of that gap is right now. Not when it's obvious, now when there's still an advantage to be had. The link is in the description, or you can go to the AIprofitboardroom.com. Come check it out. The people in there are doing the real work, and they will tell you exactly what's working and what's hype. Okay, back to the story. Let me talk about the competitive landscape, because you cannot understand why $110 billion just went into OpenAI without understanding what they're up against. So Google has been in AI longer than anyone. DeepMind, which Google acquired in 2014, is one of the most storied AI research organizations in the world. Google has Gemini, their frontier model family, embedded in search, YouTube, Gmail, Google Docs, and Android. They have more data than any company in history, and they have a balance sheet that lets them spend whatever it takes. Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, the model many experts consider to be the best for certain tasks, has raised over $30 billion. Amazon, before this week's OpenAI deal, had already put $4 billion into Anthropic and expanded that to billions more. Anthropic is a direct, serious competitor. Meta has committed to spending more than $60 billion on AI infrastructure in 2025 alone. $60 billion from one company in one single year. And Meta's strategy is open source. They're giving their models away for free to undercut everyone's pricing and become the default free option. xAI, Elon Musk's venture, raised $6 billion in late 2024 and is building one of the world's largest GPU clusters in Memphis, Tennessee. And then there's China. DeepSeek, a Chinese AI company, released a model in January 2026 that matched the performance of OpenAI's best models on several benchmarks, and they reportedly trained it at a fraction of the cost. Minimax, based in Shanghai, released their M2.5 model in early 2026. It scored 80.2% on the SWE Bench Verified Coding benchmark. Claude Opus scored 80. The gap is just 0.6%. And Minimax's model costs somewhere between 1/10 and 1/20 the price to run. Multiple Chinese AI companies are now producing frontier level models, not experimental ones, production ones with millions of users, often for free. And this is the competitive landscape that OpenAI is navigating. And this is why $110 billion feels urgent rather than excessive. When you look at the list of competitors, Google, Anthropic, Meta, xAI, DeepSeek, Minimax, and you understand the infrastructure investments each one of them is making, $110 billion starts to look less like excess and more like what it takes to stay in the game. Now, let me zoom in on the Amazon beefs, because I think it's the most underreported part of the story. OpenAI is expanding its existing $38 billion agreement with Amazon Web Services by $100 billion over the next 8 years. AWS will serve as the exclusive third-party cloud distribution provider for OpenAI's enterprise platform. That's $100 billion expansion. Let me unpack what that actually means. AWS has roughly 30% of the global cloud computing market. That means roughly 1 out of every 3 companies using cloud infrastructure in the world is on Amazon's platform. That's millions of businesses, hospitals, governments, banks, retailers, manufacturers, media companies. By making AWS the exclusive third-party cloud distribution platform for OpenAI's enterprise products, OpenAI just embedded itself into the infrastructure that powers 1/3 of the world's business operations. That's not a partnership announcement, that's a distribution strategy that makes every OpenAI's competitor's life significantly harder. If you're already on AWS and your bank is, your hospital is, and the company you work for probably is, OpenAI just became the easiest AI option for you to use. Not because necessarily the best, but because it's right there integrated into what you already pay for. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said on CNBC right after the announcement, it's so early right now in the AI space, and OpenAI is off to an amazing start. They're going to be one of the very big winners, we believe, long term. I think we can help them quite a bit as part of this partnership. That's the CEO of Amazon, one of the most successful companies in human history, saying he thinks OpenAI is going to be one of the very big winners. That's not something Andy Jassy says lightly. Let me tell you about the Codex number, because this one hits differently too. OpenAI's Codex product, which brings the power of a top engineer to anyone who wants to build software, now has 1.6 million weekly users, more than triple the number at the start of the year. 1.6 million people using an AI to write software in a week, and that number has tripled since January. Codex is not just a coding assistant, it's an AI that can take a description of what you want to build and produce working, tested, deployable code. Not snippets, not suggestions, actual working software. There's a related company called Cursor. They make an AI coding tool, and they reached $300 million in annual revenue in 2025 with 20 employees. 20 people running running a company that generates $300 million a year. There's a company called Lovable, AI app builder, $200 million in annual revenue, 15 employees. And there's Midjourney, AI image generation, $200 million in annual revenue, 40 employees. The traditional software company does maybe 200,000 to 400,000 in revenue per employee if they're doing well. These AI native companies are doing $5 million, $10 million, $15 million per employee. And that ratio is not a rounding error. That is a fundamentally different model for how businesses work. And the tools that enabled those companies to operate at that scale are being built with the money that just went into OpenAI. The companies that exist in 2030, built on top of this infrastructure, are going to have even more extreme revenue per employee ratios because the tools will be even more powerful. Sam Altman has said publicly that he expects within the next few years we'll see a $1 billion company run by a single person. One person, one AI, $1 billion in revenue. And we've seen people get close to this with, for example, OpenClaw. That was just created by one person over a weekend. That seems impossible. And a year ago, someone saying a 15-person team could do $200 million would have also seemed impossible. Here's the part of the story that keeps me up at night. And it's not the hype, it's not the excitement. The thing that actually scares smart, thoughtful people in this space, the speed. This technology does not progress at a human pace. It does not improve 5% a year the way a drug might improve through a decade of clinical trials. It doubles, then it doubles again, and then it doubles again. Let me give you the benchmark progression on coding AI because it's the clearest data we have. A year ago, the best AI systems could autonomously complete about 13% of real-world software engineering tasks. That was Cognition's Devin system where they launched it publicly. 13% seemed astounding at the time. People built entire conferences around that number. Today, the best systems are scoring in the 40, 50, and 60% range on the same benchmarks. In some specific task categories, they're approaching 80%. That is not an incremental improvement, it's the difference between an intern who needs constant supervision and a senior developer who can hand a project to you on Monday and check in with it on Friday. And the rate of improvement is not slowing down. Every major AI lab in the world has shipped capabilities in the last 90 days that would have been considered impossible or years away just 18 months ago. OpenAI shipped deep research tools, real-time voice, advanced reasoning models. Anthropic shipped Claude, Cowork, Claude Code, etc., which is widely considered some of the best writing and analysis AI and coding tools on the market. Google shipped Gemini 3.1 Pro Preview with native multimodality, as well as, for example, Nano Banana. These can create images, they can create video, audio, and text simultaneously. Then you've got DeepSeek and Minimax and multiple Chinese labs shipping models that match or approach frontier performances at a fraction of the cost, sometimes free if you run them locally. This is not the early days of the internet where you're waiting for a web page to load over dial-up. This is infrastructure that's already good enough to do real work, improving rapidly, and now receiving $110 billion to scale globally. The people who were saying AI can't really do that 18 months ago are very quietly updating their views because the thing they said it couldn't do, it does now. Let me give you one more story and I'll tell you what to do with all of this. There's a company called Cognition AI. They make Devin, the AI software engineer I mentioned earlier. In 2024, when they launched, they raised $175 million at a $2 billion valuation. Their bet was that AI was about to become a full autonomous member of engineering teams. At the same time, that seemed like a bold claim. Today, that seems obvious. The developer tools company Cursor grew from essentially zero to $300 million in annual revenue in 1 year. The company GitHub Copilot, an AI coding assistant, now has over 1 million paying subscribers. Enterprise software teams are reporting 20 to 40% productivity gains from using AI coding tools consistently. One CNBC journalist made news in late 2025 when she publicly shared that she built a working replacement for Monday.com, a project management tool that cost businesses tens of millions of dollars to run and build in about an hour, using AI with no prior coding experience. Not a toy, a functional product. That story spread because it was shocking. It shouldn't be shocking anymore. That is the normal baseline now, and the normal baseline 6 months from now will be even further along. This is the thing that I keep coming back to. Every month, the floor of what AI can do gets higher, and the gap between people who know how to use these tools and the people who don't just gets wider and wider. So let's get practical now. Let's talk about what you can actually do with this information. And I'm going to break it down into 4 different groups because the answer looks different depending on where you are in your life and your career. If you're a coder or a developer, this is your moment, not to sit back and watch. to lean in harder than you ever have. The AI tools available to you right now, Cursor, GitHub, Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT, these are not just AI assistants that help you fix bugs. They are collaborators that build entire code bases in their head, suggest architectural decisions, write tests, and build features from descriptions. Developers who use these tools are producing 2 to 3 times the output of developers who don't. That gap is going to get bigger, not smaller. Your job right now is to get fast with the tools, to build the muscle memory, to move from I sometimes ask AI for help to I can't imagine building without it. Because the developers who do that, the ones who become genuinely AI native, are going to be worth dramatically more than the ones who use AI occasionally. And the highest leverage work, system design, architecture, product strategy, client relationships, that is still deeply human. AI still can't do the judgment calls, the relationship building, the seeing around corners. That's where you want to spend your most important hours. If you're a non-technical professional, maybe a marketer, a lawyer, an accountant, a consultant, a project manager, a writer, a doctor, your job right now is to get reps in with the tools, not dabble. Not try ChatGPT once and decide it's not that impressive. Actually build a workflow. Spend 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks using AI in the actual work you do. See what it's good at. See where it falls short. Build prompting skills. The ability to give AI instructions that produce useful, accurate, high quality output. The people who build this skill now are going to have a meaningful advantage over the people who wait until their company mandates it. Because by then, the tools will be even more capable, the competitive pressure will be higher, and the people who figured out early will already be far ahead. This is not about being a tech person. This is about being a person who uses good tools to do better work. If you are a manager or a business owner, your job right now is to make decisions whilst you still have time to make them thoughtfully. Which parts of your business are you going to be disrupted? Not might be, will be, because every industry that involves people using their brains to process information and produce output are going to be affected. Which functions can you augment with AI right now to become more competitive? Is it customer service, content creation, sales outreach, financial analysis, compliance documentation? There's an AI tool for almost all of these, and in most cases, the tool is already good enough to use in production. And the companies that start making these decisions now, carefully, thoughtfully, with attention to the human cost of the transition, are going to be in much better positions than the companies that wait until they're left behind and scrambling. If you're a leader, a CEO, a board member, an executive, your job is to take this seriously at the strategic level, not as a technology initiative, as a fundamental business transformation. The companies that treat AI as an IT project or a pilot program will not survive the decade in their current form. The companies that treat it the way Amazon treated the internet in 1995 as an existential opportunity that needs to be at the center of everything will define the era. This is not a prediction, this is pattern recognition from every major technology transition in history. The railroads changed which cities mattered. The telephone changed how businesses communicated. The internet changed how every industry was touched. AI is going to touch every industry simultaneously in a much shorter time frame than any of the previous transitions. Boards and executives who are not having that conversation at the highest level of their organizations today are already behind. I want to talk about the geopolitical layer one more time because I don't think most coverage of this story does it justice. The United States and China are in a race, not just a business race, not just a technology race, a race for who sets the rules of the most powerful technology of this century. If you build the AI infrastructure that most of the world uses, you get to decide how it works, who it serves, what values it reflects, and what it can and can't do. And that's not a small thing, that's everything. China's DeepSeek, Minimax, Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba. Government mandates and unlimited political will to compete. And as DeepSeek proves, the export restrictions on high-end chips are not the barrier that American policymakers hoped they would be. The United States has OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, a private sector that has historically out-innovated any government program in history. And now with the Stargate project and the $110 billion raise, something closer to a public-private partnership with the kind of scale that was previously only associated with national mobilizations. OpenAI said, "We are entering a new phase where frontier AI moves from research into daily use at global scale." That is geopolitical statement dressed up in business language. Global scale means everywhere. It means Africa, Southeast Asia, South America, the parts of the world that haven't yet decided which AI platforms to build their economies on. If OpenAI and its partners, Amazon, Nvidia, SoftBank, get there first with reliable, affordable, high-quality AI tools, they lock in those markets for a generation. competition. If Chinese AI companies get there first, they do the same. This is a race, and $110 billion is how you fund the opening moves. Now, let me be honest with you for a moment. I've been making content about AI for a while now. I talk to a lot of people inside the space, investors, developers, executive researchers, and there's a thing that happens in private conversations that doesn't always make it into the public discord. Smart, thoughtful, serious people are genuinely uncertain about how this goes. Not uncertain that it changes things, certain that it changes things. Deeply uncertain about how the change distributes. Because the thing about productivity technology is that it tends to create enormous amounts of wealth at the top for the people who own the platforms, the tools, the infrastructure, whilst the gains flow to the rest of the economy much more slowly and unevenly. The internet made Amazon, Google, and Facebook into trillion-dollar companies. It also destroyed hundreds of thousands of retail jobs, newspaper jobs, travel agent jobs, bank teller jobs, and the net economic effect over time was probably positive. But for the people whose specific jobs went away in 2010, probably positive over time is not a satisfying answer. AI is going to do something similar, bigger, faster. The productivity gains are going to be real. The economic value created is going to be enormous. The disruption to existing roles is also going to be real. And it's going to happen faster than any previous transition. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that because you deserve a straight answer, not just a highlight reel. The people who tell you about only the opportunity without talking about the difficulties are not being honest with you. And the people who tell you only about the disruption without talking about the opportunity are also not being honest with you. The truth is both things. Enormous opportunity, real difficulty, faster than anyone is comfortable with. And the way through it, the only way through it, is to understand it clearly, keep learning, and keep making decisions whilst you still have options. Here's where I'm going to land. $110 billion just went into OpenAI. Amazon, Nvidia, SoftBank, three of the most powerful companies in the world, just made the biggest bets of their histories on a single AI company. 900 million people use ChatGPT every week. Codex, OpenAI's coding product, has tripled its users since January. The valuation from $157 billion to $730 billion in less than 2 years. These are not projections, these are facts, they happened this week. And the thing about facts like these is they compound. Every dollar of infrastructure built this year makes next year's models even more powerful. Every company that AI deploys this year produces data that makes next year's AI more capable. Every new user that joins these platforms makes the competitive moat deeper and the switching cost higher. This is a flywheel, and the flywheel is already spinning. The question is not whether you're going to be effective with this. The question is whether you're going to be someone this happens to or someone who uses it. Those are genuinely different outcomes. The person who understands what's happening, who starts skills now, who learns to use these tools as leverage, who makes decisions proactively rather than reactively, that person is going to look back in 5 years and be grateful they paid attention when the signal was still early. The person who scrolls past the headline and goes back to whatever they were doing, that person is going to look back in 5 years and wished they'd taken it more seriously. And I'm not here to predict exactly how it unfolds. Nobody can do that honestly. But I'm here to tell you that this is the moment, not later, not when it's obvious to everyone, now. The window to get ahead of a shift like this is not open indefinitely. It never is. The people who benefit most from any major technology transition are the ones who engaged earlier. Not the builders necessarily, but the users, the people who figured out how to use the new tools before everyone else. And that's the opportunity that is sitting in front of you right now. $110 billion just told you that the people with the most information and the most money in the world think AI is the most important thing happening on Earth. And I think they're right. The only question is, what are you going to do about it? I know what I'm doing, and I think you can do it too, and that's why you're still watching. Let's get to work, and I hope to see you inside the AI Profit Boardroom. This is my AI automation community that helps you save time, scale your business, and grow with AI automation. If you want the playbooks, if you want all the automations that I personally use, along with an amazing, supportive, and helpful community of people trying to learn and grow with this stuff, feel free to check it out. Link in the comments and description, or just go to the AIprofitboardroom.com. Thank you.